right. Hi, how's everyone this evening? Or this afternoon, I guess. We're doing this a little bit earlier than we normally do. Welcome to Bike Barn Custom Fit Studio. This is our fourth clinic. We do a clinic every month focusing on touch points or cycling issues. And we're very, very glad to have you join us virtually. I still wish we could all meet together. I really, I'm not as comfortable talking to a camera as I am talking to you in person. I will say that at the end, we will open it up for a few questions. So if during the course of the presentation that there's things that I don't cover or things that I cover that raise questions, just hold your questions to the end and we will address a few questions at the end of the presentation. I'm Cynthia Stewart. I have been the manager of the Bike Barn Custom Fit Studio since, we've been in business since 2008. I've been with Bike Barn for 14 years. Passionate cyclist. I've done everything from riding hybrids to racing mountain bikes and recreational, serious, everything in between. So I can relate to you as a cyclist. I perform all kinds of fits on all kinds of athletes, anything from recreational riders that are out enjoying all the wonderful trails that we have, or hike and bike paths we have here in Houston, to the serious cyclists that like to race. So a little background on me. So the studio has been here since, like I said, 2008, and we fit all kinds of people, and very, very happy to have you here tonight. So we're going to be focusing tonight on upper body issues, and there's a lot. When I started putting this presentation together, I realized there's a lot to cover, but we'll try to get most of the points covered. But when we talk about upper body, hands, neck, shoulders, back. General cycling advice, because this can affect your comfort. Cycling is a sport of repetitive motion. So when you get on a bicycle, we're sitting in a position, we're pedaling 90 RPMs a minute if you're striving to do a high cadence. Times you think you're on the bike an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. That's a lot of pedal strokes and a lot of repetition. And so if something is not quite in line or your position's not quite right, something minor after a lot of thousands of pedal strokes can turn into something major, or certainly rob you of power, affect your comfort, and take away from your enjoyment of the ride. We want you to enjoy the bike. I like to tell people the most important bike fit is the very first fit. I get a lot of people saying, well, I'm just a beginner, or I'm just a newbie. I'm not a professional. Well, guess what? Most of us are not professionals, and we all started someplace. But if you get started on your bike in a good position that is comfortable, efficient, and you're not hurting, instead of dreading riding your bike, you're going to look forward to riding the bike because it's fun. And that's what we want. We want you to be in a position where you can enjoy the bike, not injure yourself, and then get the most out of the bike, because you've made an investment in that bicycle. We want you to be able to use it and not let it collect dust in your garage. And along those lines, bike fit is dynamic. And when I say that, I mean it's constantly changing, fluid. I've been riding for, 20 some years, a lot of years. I'm not the same as I was when I was in my 30s. My body's not the same. Some of us may get better, some of us may get worse. Some of us lose weight, some gain weight. Fitness changes, we may have injuries. Certainly my equipment has changed. All of those factors, all of those issues factor into your bike fit. So if I change a seat, oh look, this new seat came out, then my fit is going to change because the saddle stack height might be different. If I've injured my hamstring or injured a shoulder, that's going to affect my bike fit. And so that's something you should do an annual fit checkup once a year, just to make sure that you stay in a great, comfortable position. And my favorite saying is, we want to make the bike fit you, not make you fit your bike. So many people, especially new riders, go out, they get a bike and they're thinking, oh, I guess I'll get used to it. Or I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. I guess maybe that's supposed to hurt. No, we want the bike to fit you so that you can be comfortable and enjoy the ride. So let's go on and cover kind of what the basic upper body issues are. The biggest thing that I hear people talk about is hand numbness or tingling in their hands. How many of you have been on a group ride and you're riding along and you see somebody shaking their hands out. And so they're riding along, and then you see them take their hand off the handlebars and shake their hands. That's usually a sign your hands are going numb. Tingling kind of starts before the hands go numb. I hear complaints of elbow pain. That joint is not something that we're moving and doing a lot with, but our elbows shouldn't hurt on the bike. Neck strain is another big thing that I hear people complain about, and we'll address things that can help ease that neck strain. Shoulder pain, anywhere from the traps to your rotator cuff, all that shoulder issue. And then another big thing, back pain, especially when you get to be my age and years of abuse on our back and spine. There can be people with lower back pain or bulging discs, things like that. But those types of things, all of these things shouldn't keep you from riding a bike, and we're going to address some solutions that you can do yourself to help your bike fit be a little bit more efficient, more comfortable, or it may be things that you need to have a professional take a look at, because I'll tell you, it's difficult to fit yourself even when you know what you're doing. I can't fit myself. So I'd like to talk a little bit about why your hands go numb. Our hands have a lot of nerves that run through them. The ulnar nerve runs up through the outside of the hand. I mean, it starts all the way up at the top of the arm and runs through the length of the arm to the outside of the hand. If these two fingers are going numb, that's typically something to do with the ulnar nerve being either compressed or too much pressure on it. The median nerve comes through the middle and up through the mid part of your hand. And that's another thing. If you compress right there where the median nerve is, my fingers will start to tingle pretty quickly. And then the radial nerve is usually not quite as bothersome when you're riding, but some people, if their hand position's not quite right, can irritate that radial nerve. So, if those nerves are getting irritated, compressed, it makes for uncomfortable hands. So I wanted to give just a little background on our anatomy. So what can affect our hands having too much pressure? Certainly, if you're on the wrong size bike, that can affect the pressure. It can affect all of your upper body comfort. Bike geometry is very, very different from brand to brand. It's different from type of bike. Within the lines that we carry, there's race bikes, endurance bikes, aero bikes. They all have a different geometry. When we talk about the geometry of a bike, the stack is typically how high the frame is, or it could be the handlebar stack, and that's how high the handlebars are in relationship to the bottom bracket. And then the reach, how far away from the bottom bracket to either the center of the front part of the frame or the handlebars, so how far you're having to reach. So typically our upper body will be, if we're too stretched out, and I hear people say this all the time, I'm too stretched out. It can affect everything, your hands, your shoulders, your back, your neck. But the reach to the handlebars is the first thing that we would look at when we hear you complaining of either neck issues, shoulder issues. So what I always want to see when you're on the bike is that you have relaxed shoulders. I know many of us have stressful jobs. Many of us, especially if you've been sitting at home working from home through these last several months of lockdown, you might not be sitting in the most ergonomically correct position and have shoulder issues anyway. But most of us, we have tension in our neck and shoulders, and that can be exacerbated by a poor bike fit. So I want to see your shoulders relaxed on the bike. I want to see a slight bend in the elbows, and then a wrist that's neutral. In the picture on the slide, if you can see that, you notice there's about a 15-degree bend in the elbows. We don't want to lock those elbows out. And then the wrist, when I say neutral, I like to think of it as a handshake position. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but we don't shake hands with a stiff arm. We have a slight bend, and our wrist is not cocked up or cocked down. It's in a neutral position. So if you're on a road bike, and most of our things tonight I'm talking about relate to road bikes, but it can help. There'll be things that I can help you with if you're a tri or a mountain bike rider also. So how do we get you There's some people when I say we want to see a relaxed elbow or relaxed shoulders. Well, when I see them on their bikes, they start forcing it. Well, okay, I'll force it, or I'll make my elbows be soft. That's you trying to fit your bike. Like I said, we want to make the bike fit you. So when we determine if your handlebars are too far away from you, or too close to you, or too high or too low, all of those positions can affect the comfort of your hands, your elbows, your shoulders, your back. So how do we adjust where the handlebars are? There's a piece on the bike, and for those of you that are more experienced cyclists or understand the parts of the bike, bear with me, but the part of the bike called the stem, and I don't know if y'all can see the bike here. The stem is the part that holds the handlebars on. And on most newer bikes, it's something that's very easily changed. Now, some of the new bikes that are integrated, where the handlebar, stem, frame all work together and are proprietary from brand to brand, it's a little more difficult to change. Or on older bikes, where there are different sizes and what current handlebar shape or stem shapes are, it might be a little more difficult to change. But stems come in a variety of angles. So when I say stem angle, typical stems on most road bikes are between a 6-degree and a 7-degree rise, or it can be in the level position. But you can see if we have a stem in the level position as opposed to 6 degrees up, that's going to raise your handlebar anywhere from a few millimeters to a centimeter or a couple of centimeters. Some people need those handlebars brought up, so keeping in mind that you can get stems in different angles can help with setting the handlebar height. There's a variety of different lengths of stems too. If you've just purchased a new bike, it's going to come with a stem that's appropriate for the size bike that you got. That doesn't mean it's the right stem for you. So just because I might be the same height as you doesn't mean you and I are going to ride the same bike or going to fit perfectly on the same size bike. Some people have longer arms. I've got long arms, longer torso, shorter legs. So that you're going to fit, you may be the same height, but we're going to fit differently. So stems come in a variety of lengths, anywhere on a road bike from about 70 millimeters long, which is about this long, to anywhere up to 120, 130, and you can probably get a 140 length stem, which is really, really long. And I know a centimeter, they come in about a centimeter difference, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it can make a huge difference in where your hands end up laying on the handlebars. Think about it, when you're too stretched out and you can't get to the brake hoods on your road bike, you start stretching for it. And when you stretch, those shoulders are going to roll forward, or your back is going to be strained. And if you've got tight hamstrings, that can add to the tightening in your lower back. So if you're having to reach too far, it's going to affect everything in the upper body, and then it changes your torso angle, and then it can put strain on the neck as well. So finding the right position for the handlebar is critical to get your torso angle. On a road bike, we like to see it between 35 and 45 degrees. So we don't want, and you know, sometimes the racer guys want to be a lot more aggressive. Some of us that might have back issues might want to be a little bit more upright and conservative. Hybrid bikes, mountain bikes, we want to see your torso angle at about 50 degrees. So a little bit more upright. When we start talking about tri and aero, that's something totally different. So getting those handlebars to the right position. There's also a lot of things that we can do then with angle. I say typical stems are 6 or 7 degree angle or rise. There's some that are 10, 17, 20, 25. We've got some stems that are adjustable. So there are a lot of ways to bring the handlebars up. If we need to make it lower, I've seen people that come in and their shoulders are killing them because their handlebars are too high. And you think if they're too high, it's going to push your shoulders back. And that's uncomfortable. So there's things that we can do to make the handlebars lower as well, if that's what's needed. Most bikes also have, I don't know if you can see, spacers underneath the stem on the steer tube. So we're limited on how high we can get it. We don't want to affect the handling adversely. but there's spacers too that we can make it lower if we need to. And then the other thing is that stem in the top picture, you see it's in a positive angle. Well, it can also be flipped over to be negative. So it could either be almost level or in a negative angle. So those things all, we would determine a stem size or length and angle to make the handlebar to be the right height and the right reach for you. So moving on from the stems to the handlebars. Handlebars are, again, a lot, come in different widths, anywhere from 36 centimeters all the way up to 46 centimeters. The slide showing our shoulder width. When we're looking at you on a road bike, we're looking to have that wrist, elbow, shoulder in nice neutral alignment. If you're riding a bike that has a handlebar that's way too wide for you, you're going to do something to compensate. You end up putting your hands in an improper position. And when you start moving your hands into an improper position, those nerves that we talked about earlier are going to get compressed. So the handlebars should be about the same width as your shoulders. Like I said, they come in varying different degrees of width. Now men, a lot of times you can get by with the handlebar a little bit wider and not have any issues. But men have more upper body strength than most women do. But if it's a lot too wide, the things I see people do to compensate is not put their hands on the handlebars correctly. Can you see the handlebar? So on a road bar, we want a nice level transition from the shifter to the handlebar, which will help to keep your hand in a neutral position. And when I have my hands on the handlebars, can you still see that, Nikki? Up higher? And now my hands are not, or arms are in a bad position, but I want things to be aligned to where it's the wrist, elbow, shoulder. And this meaty part of our hand here on a road bike bar tends to have more cushion, and you don't compress that ulnar nerve quite as bad if you have the pressure even front to back. Now, when the handlebars are too wide for you, I'll see people do this, and they prop their hands up on the bike. When you do that, you start putting the pressure where that medial nerve comes up. And like I said, if I start pushing here for just a few seconds, I'm already feeling some tingling in my fingers. You think about riding your bike and putting your weight on your hands to the point that it compresses those nerves, they're going to start tingling. I'll back up a minute because there is going to be weight on your hands. Typically, people will complain, there's pressure on my hands, there's pressure on my hands. There's going to be pressure because we are going to bear some weight with our hands. It's hard to measure, but my rule of thumb is, and what I try to tell people so they understand, 60% of your weight is going to be on the saddle, 40% will be on your hands. Now, other factors that can affect that is your core. And we do use our core when we're on a road bike, a mountain bike, a hybrid. And if that core is weak, you're going to end up relying on your hands a lot more than you would if your core is strong. But we always want to try and engage our core because it's going to help take a little bit of that pressure off of our hands. So back to the handlebars. Different widths. If you're riding one that's way too wide, I'll see people then, like I said, move their hands in, which then they're turning their wrists in an unnatural position, and that can start irritating the nerves. Or they sit on the tops and ride there because it's more comfortable, they're more upright. What happens when you do that, you don't have as much control. You can't get to your shifters, you can't get to the brakes. So we're always on a road bike looking to have you sit on the brake hoods. Can you see this portion? On the brake hoods, most of us will ride there about 80% of the time. So not only do handlebars have different widths, there's different shapes of the drops. There's an ergo shape, a round shape, a short and shallow. And when I say shallow, it's how much drop there is from the top down to the bottom. And Don't be afraid to use the drops. It's another position. That's a good change, and put, you can change positions up. And again, when you're in the drops, that wrist should be straight. I don't want to see the wrist turned or cocked funny, because then that puts strain in the wrong places on your hands. And then the reach, sometimes on bikes, if the stem, if we can't get any shorter stem, you want to look at the reach of the handlebar. And I don't know if you can tell on the graphic, but the reach of the handlebar is from the center of the bar to the furthest point where the shifters are attached. They come in a lot of different reaches. So finding a shape and a style that works for you. There's also bar rotation. Like I talked about, we want a nice flat transition from the shifter to the bar, and then finding that rotation so that your wrist, we keep the wrist in a nice neutral position so we don't put undue strain here. That pain that is in your hands can end up running all the way up into the back, or up your shoulders, and then to your back too. So again, if you're too stretched out, that can put strain on the shoulders, cause them to roll forward, put strain on the lower back, and cause you, to reach forward, and then you get fatigued, and then you sit up, and you're not very aero, you're not fast, you're catching a lot of wind. Am I doing okay on time? The other thing that can affect how your upper body comfort is your saddle position. And I know, when we start talking about isolating parts of our body and doing a clinic on just one part of the body, it's difficult because everything is connected. So sometimes if one thing is out of whack on your bike, it will travel and affect everything else. Saddle position can affect how you sit on the bicycle. We like to start with a level saddle, and today's saddles are not all typically flat. There might be some curves in your seat, but there's things I do to, or parts of the saddle that should be level. Oftentimes I'll see people drop the nose of their saddle to help with comfort in their undercarriage. Well, they start dropping the nose of the saddle, like in the picture on your right, and you end up sliding forward. So what happens, you may get the pressure off the seat, but now you're sliding forward. What happens when you slide forward? We start pushing ourselves back. So you're pedaling, and how many pedal strokes a minute? 90 RPMs a minute times an hour, 2 hours on the bike. If every third or fourth pedal stroke you're pushing yourself back because you slide forward, push back, what's going to hurt? You're going to end up with some upper body pressure, or it might put more pressure on your hands. Everything might fit properly on the bike, but your saddle's in the wrong position. And that can cause you to do a lot of extra movement. And that wasted energy takes away from your ride and your ability to generate power, and just from the overall comfort. The other thing is when I'll see people put the nose of the seat up thinking, okay, it's going to kind of cradle me and it puts me in a better position. Well, if that's getting up into your soft tissue, I'll see people rotate their pelvis, kind of tuck their pelvis under, and I know you may not be able to see, but they tuck their pelvis under, which causes their back to curve and hunch and shoulders roll forward because they can't rotate their pelvis. It does not elongate their spine. So then kind of so that position has a lot of the body. Again, forward, which elongates your spine. And that neutral spine is going to help not only with your ability to generate power, but with your comfort. And comfort is like, I'll see people sometimes too when we talk about saddles. Sometimes I'll have women that come in for a bike fit, petite women in particular, or people that are on the wrong size bike, a bike that's too big for them. And they might have had a basic sizing done, and somebody has slammed the seat all the way forward. They might have been complaining they had hand issues or hands were going on. So somebody slammed the seat all the way forward. That may get them closer to the handlebars, but then again, that can cause some other issues with your knees, and it may throw your knees out of the wrong are out of alignment and cause you some knee issues. So slamming the seat forward is not always the best solution for trying to solve upper body issues. So I talked about elbows. What I missed on the elbows was, don't lock your elbows out. We want them to be soft, but I want it to be because your handlebar is in the right place, not because you're trying to force them into a soft place. When we lock a joint out, it's hard on the joint. It puts a lot of stress on that joint. And then you think about the rides that we do around Houston or around our area. If you're out there on chip seal roads and they're bumpy, you're bumping, jarring the fillings out of your teeth. Well, if you've got your elbow locked out, it's going to put a lot of strain on that joint. And that over time, it could create tendonitis, bursitis, and none of that is good. So we want everything to be relaxed and in a good neutral position. So when we talk about the hand and neck issues, again, let me reiterate, the most important fit is the first fit. Again, if you get started in a good position for where you are today, where your body is today, your fitness today, you're going to enjoy the ride and hopefully keep from having those problems before they start. Relax. If you're a new cyclist, I know that when you get out there, our first instinct is to tense up. If it's your first time to ride with a group, I'll see people that will get very tense. And what do we do when we get tense? We'll put the death grip on the handlebars. Well, you squeeze those handlebars tight enough, and what starts happening? My knuckles are starting to turn white because the blood is leaving that area. What happens when the blood leaves an area? They'll start to tingle and go to sleep. So our bikes they should be an extension of us, but we don't have to grip onto those handlebars so tightly. We're not using the grip to steer the bike. It should be a very loose grip on the handlebars, and most of the steering is coming from your hips. So sometimes your bike can be in the right position, but because you're tensed up, you are going to lock out your elbows. So relax, loosen, soften up those elbows. I try to tell people to smile because when you smile, it's hard to be tense. So just don't grimace. That's what happens to me when I think I'm smiling and relaxed. It turns out to be a grimace. And it's not a bad idea to move your hands around. Road bikes have several positions. You can ride out all the way out on the brake hoods where you can reach your shifters. You can slide back just a little bit to where it gives you're a little closer. You can ride on the tops. I'm not telling you can't ride there. That's my kind of getting started, warming up position, lollygagging around, or if I need to get a snack out of my jersey pocket. But most of the control is when you're out here on the brake hoods. You can get your brakes and your shifters. And then don't be afraid to use the drops. If you can't get to the drops, usually that tells me something's in the wrong position. So we want you to be able to use the drops. And it just gives you another position. The little picture there that I have, we still on that same slide. So the little picture there is a fit that I did, and his seat was too low for one thing, but we did a lot of adjustments to the handlebars and got his spine elongated and got his elbows soft as well. And then I think the next slide is another before and after picture. I had a young lady who we brought her handlebars up, and it softened her elbows, softened her shoulders. And it's maybe hard to tell, maybe a little bit dark, but her hands were just not in the right position. She was having trouble just relaxing. So with things that I did with raising the handlebars and stem position, helped to put her in a much more neutral position. So at the next slide, I like to show this: comfort equals speed. I know that many of you are not racers, don't aspire to be, don't care to be, don't even want to ride fast. That's okay. What I'd like to show you though is the very first guy is a client of the Bike Barn Fit Studio. And even though he's a racer and going fast, notice in his drops, his hands are in a neutral position. His elbows are neutral. His shoulders are relaxed. And he's in the lead of the pack with the Bike Barn jersey on. I'm proud of that. You look at the guy in the second position. You notice his wrists are turned. His handlebars are a little bit too wide for him. His elbows are locked out. And he's probably getting the hurt put on him by the guy in the lead there too. So that helps when we get tired and fatigued, that sometimes makes our form go out the window. Number 3 too, not quite so bad. Shoulders are rolled forward on him. And then the poor junior in the back, we won't even talk about his position. But basically if you're not in a comfortable position, it's a little bit harder, it's a lot harder to generate power, not as efficient. You end up wasting energy. And most of us, even if you don't care to go fast, who wouldn't like to go a little bit faster with the same amount of effort? So when your position is efficient, usually you're going to get a little bit more speed with the same amount of effort. And that's what we do here in the studio. Our process is by appointment. We want to talk to you about your riding style, your riding history, what goals you're working towards. And I also like to know what kind of injuries you've had, not necessarily bike crashes, unless that resulted in an injury, but even things like a broken bone as a child can affect your body today. So and then we'll go through a physical assessment. So all of those things, talking to you, going through a physical assessment helps us to see what your body's like off the bike. Then we perform a dynamic fit. So we're watching you while you're pedaling, under load, at speed, and taking measurements, taking real-time data with motion capture, and then we start analyzing it and putting you in a position that is right for you. We send you a full report, and we like to see you for a follow-up. So I've gone over a lot of information. I've told you a little bit about what we do here. I'm sure there's things that I didn't talk about that you may have questions about. So if there's some people with questions right now, I'll let either Lisa or Nikki give questions. So feel free to chime in with questions, I think. Are they to type questions?
Yes.
Oh, can you type your questions in? Because I think we've got so many people that we can't open up the audio for everybody, which was great. We're glad we had such a great turnout tonight. Let us know too afterwards if the time works for you. Feel free to send me an email at studio@bikebarn.com to let us know if this time works for you, or if there's a topic that you'd rather hear, or another topic that we could speak on. Yeah, if you've got questions about the topic tonight, go ahead and if you type it in, then Lisa will share those with me.
We have a question for you to talk a little bit about gloves, the role of gloves in riding.
Awesome. Thank you for reminding me, because I actually had a pair of gloves set out here and I forgot to touch on that. Gloves are a great addition to riding, and gloves can be a big help. Sometimes, though, gloves can cause issues as well. These are a specialized body geometry glove, and I don't know if you can see the padding. They do have nice gel. It's in a position where it will help to relieve the pressure on that medial nerve. Now, you want your gloves to fit not too tight and not too loose. It's like Three Bears, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You want it to be just right. If it's too tight, and our hands do swell when we ride, but if it's too tight, it can cause discomfort. I used to think that I had to wear these real padded, heavy padded gloves, and it helped a lot. My fit now is in such a great position that I don't have to wear gloves. But let me tell you, I still wear gloves every ride. It's Houston, it's hot, it's humid, I sweat, my hands get slippery on the handlebars, so I still wear gloves. Plus, there's a nice little soft spot on the thumb where you can wipe the sweat off of your brow. And in case you ever fall, our first instinct is to put our hands out, and you put gloves on, it's going to protect your hands. So a good glove, and depending on where you're having the pressure, this is one example of a glove that puts a lot of padding here. I personally like a glove that has a little more padding on the heel of my hand over here. But again, like I said earlier, our hands on the outside of the hand has a little more cushion naturally. And if your pressure is even front to back, if you can see, then you shouldn't have as many issues. Does that answer the question? Plus, these are high visibility gloves, so too, if you're riding out in Houston streets, the yellow high vis makes your turn signals show up a little bit better.
So we have a question from Joshua.
Hi, Josh.
Asking if he should get a fit before getting his new bike or after he gets it, if he knows his general size. Also, what he should do if he's between two sizes.
Okay. So many people are between sizes, and I didn't really elaborate a lot on bike geometry at the beginning. There's so many different geometries, and what 56 centimeters in one brand may not be the same as 56 centimeters in another brand. So if you know generally what size bike you need, if you're buying the same brand or the same style, maybe you don't need a fit first. I highly recommend getting a fit first because there's things that a professional fitter can help you with. A lot of people I can fit on 2 different size bikes. It just depends on the feel you want underneath you. But there's a lot of other little things that we do with handlebar width, stem length, talking about the geometry. And when I say geometry, it's the size of the frame, the shape of the frame. Just within one brand, Trek for instance, we've got the endurance bike, the Domani. It's going to be a little taller in the front and a little shorter top tube. For longer rides, it tends to be more comfortable. The Madone is a very racy aero bike. So it's a little bit lower in the front. It's got aero tubing. The Amanda, a very, very lightweight, all-around climbing bike, crit bike. Geometry of that is going to be a little more responsive, a little twitchier, not quite as stable, but that's not a bad thing. So I beat around the bush a little bit. It's always a good idea to get a fit first. Then I can make a recommendation, or a professional fitter can make a recommendation on what size works best for you. And I had a guy years ago. I fit him on both 54 and 56 because first thing he insisted that he was a 54, but he also insisted that he wanted his stem in a level position. I couldn't get the stem in a level position and him be comfortable on a 54. We went up to a 56 with the stem level, and he was happy. But it's the same points in space on 2 different size bikes. We still want the handlebars basically to be in the same position.
Do we have questions about the cost of a fit?
Of a fit, okay. So I have been trained by a lot of most of the major fit schools in the country. I've been doing it for a lot of years. We have expensive equipment, so our fits are not the cheapest, but it is an investment, and it's good. It's an investment in your health and your fitness, and whether you spent $300 on your bike or $15,000 on your bike, you spent good money on your bike. I want you to be able to enjoy it. Our road fits are $349.99. Our tri-fits are a little bit more because there's a lot more parts that we have to adjust with the arm pads, aero extensions, and they're $399.99. The sessions take about 2.5 hours, so I'm spending a lot of time with you. You get a full printed out report. You get a free follow-up that's included with that cost. And I'm the type of person, if you've got questions before that 30-day follow-up is due, I want you to give me a call or email me, and we'll address whatever questions you have. So I understand it's expensive, but again, we want you to enjoy that bike as opposed to dreading riding your bike. That was a good question.
Another question, should your back be straight or slightly hunched in a normal riding position?
I never like to use the term hunched over because that's doesn't sound like a good position, but that's a great question. It depends on the natural shape of your back when you're off the bike. That's where the physical assessment that I do comes into play, because I'm looking at the curvature of your spine off the bike. I know I naturally have a little bit of curve in my upper back. So when I get on the bike, I'm not totally straight. Everyone is different. So if you've got a spine that has a natural curve, you might have a little bit more curve on the bike than somebody who has a very straight spine or a neutral spine. So it's very dependent. Now there'll be times when I see people sitting on the bike and their back looks like a C. That is usually an indication that their pelvis is not rolling forward enough to elongate their spine. So Typically, I like to see a relatively flat back. Again, it just depends on what your body looks like off the bike. Hopefully that answered your
I think we
question.
have two more that we have time for. Quickly, can you touch on if you have two bikes that you want to have fit, if there's any advantage of doing those in the same time?
Of course, certainly. If you're riding both bikes, you probably want to have them both fit you. But the second bike is not a full $349. A second bike, we have a fee just for second bike or a consultation of $149.99, and that includes a full report and a follow-up on that bike. If you've got a mountain bike and a road bike, or a tri-bike and a road bike, those numbers you can't just always translate. So it's from one bike to another. So it's good to go ahead and get fit on both bikes. Now, if you've got two road bikes and everything's the same on those, you might be able to transfer numbers from one fit to the other. But sometimes the crank length may be different, or you don't have the same seat on both bikes, and that affects your fit because you sit differently on the seat. Good question. Time for one more?
Let's do one more. How can I alleviate pain between the thumb and pointer finger when riding road bikes on the bikes?
So this webbing here, and I don't know the anatomical name for that, that's not the part of our hand that's designed to bear weight. That usually means that you are putting too much pressure. Can you see that? You can that you're putting too much pressure here. So either your handlebars are rolled down and you're supporting yourself here. So we want to make sure that your hand is in a neutral position, and that webbing should not be all the way up against the front of the brake, the shifter and the brake hood. So if the bars are too close and you're putting your hand too far out, that could be causing that pain. That's a hand position issue. It also could be that your handlebars are too wide and you're putting your hands in a little unnatural position.
We have one more.
One more question, last one.
This is for sure. That's one. Would the bike fit be different for indoor on the trainer versus outdoor on the road? And this person feels that the current fit on the bike is great when ridden outdoors, even for long hours, but indoors it's less comfortable during the longer rides.
That's understandable. I personally am not a great person. I'm a great trainer rider, and it's hard for me to be fit because when I sit on the trainer, I feel every little pressure point. The trainer puts the bike in a stationary position, most trainers. Now, there are some that the bike will move with you. There's some that have the climber where the front end will raise and lower. Some of the virtual programs that are out now make things a lot more interesting and fun. But typically on the trainer, the bike's in a stationary position. And it's not the same as when we're out on the road. Our bodies are not using our stabilizing muscles. The bike isn't moving underneath us like it would on the trainer or out on the road. Two things you can do. Make sure your bike is either level or a little bit nose up, because that can affect the position. But typically, I don't say do two different fits for indoors and outdoors. But, and the other thing is too, unless you're a triathlete, that type A personality that loves to be in pain, which I don't advocate being in pain on your bike, a trainer ride is not normally going to be as long as we would go and ride outside. Trainer workouts are harder than on the road. A 45-minute trainer session probably equates to about an hour, hour and a half, maybe more on the road. So it is a different ball game. And the good news is on the trainer, usually, unless you're on rollers, you can sit up, take your hands, change your position a little bit more. You're not worried about cars or worrying about the bike wobbling. So you can change your position a little bit more, stand up out of the saddle a little bit more too. But if it's your upper body, typically people complain more about the saddle on the trainer than they do other upper body. But that was a great question. I'm sorry if we couldn't get to everyone's question tonight, this afternoon. I appreciate the questions, and I know everyone's got their own unique issues. please, if you are interested in a fit, or if you've got questions that we didn't answer tonight, don't hesitate to email us at studio@bikebarn.com. Shoot me an email, give us a call. I think our information is up on the screen. I would like to offer a coupon to everyone that joined us for this session. So if you call or email, if you mention coupon code Studio Fit for June, give us we'll give you a coupon. So thank you again. If you've also got any topics you'd like to see us cover in the future, we'd be happy to take suggestions. Thanks so much, and we hope to see you next month. Thanks.